Serbs of Izorod. The Bible stands original. The Bible serves as a fundamental source not only for this chapter but for the whole book. In addition to the great respect and religious significance, the Bible also has a role of credible historical source. That is why it is the most important witness for us, the original table. This is a completely new approach to history. In fact, the discovery of large part of all history which has not been approached as an integral part of national history until now. Among several other biblical people, Serbs can base their history on the Bible. Although today we have several types of records older in time than the Old Testament, no group of these records has this clarity and breadth of the story of the people of the then known world, which includes Europe, Asia up to Indus River, and North Africa. The Holy Scriptures are usually called the Bible by Greeks and Romans, and consequently all Western nations. The name comes from Greek word da Biblia, which means books in its plural. The word was taken over by the Greeks, from the Greeks by Romans, the Latin Bible, and from them all modern Western nations. Serbs call these books the Holy Scriptures, literally as the first Christians called them. Muslims also, in their first writings, divide people on barbarians and those who possess the script. This is a great proof that we Serbs, although not all, received Christianity directly from the saints, if directly from holy apostles, or more correctly from Apostle Pavle in 1st century. Because if we had received Christianity indirectly through the Greeks, we would not have had this name for the holy books, but we would have called them the Bible or Biblia. Old and New, the Hebrew word berit for the Old Testament has the meaning of covenant and refers to covenant between God and man. And also has a meaning of alliance between God and man. Although the words are not completely the same from those of the Jewish language, they in their meaning speak the same. First part of Old Testament, in which is explained the origin of the world and people, the Jews called by two names, Izirot and Bershis. On Greek language, it was called Genesis, which was adopted by Latins as Genesis, which means being born. However, the second word they wrote in Latin also as Bereshit and translated it as the beginning. About the first word Izirot, they don't speak anything except Angelia Stančić-Pajićeva, who with right says that this is Serbian word in Jewish language. Izirot in archaic Serbian pronunciation corresponds to the Greek word Genesis. It is known that the people have always moved, mixed and changed their living space, so it is right understanding of what is set out in Izirod needs to be determined primarily by the exact time of writing this part of the Old Testament. The famous exodus of the Jews from Egypt happened between 1264 to 1260 years before Christ, and the beginning of conquest of Palestine 1230 to 1225 years before Christ. It was both the time of the revelation of the laws of Moses and the beginning of the Old Testament. There is a very long period of oral tradition before the beginning of the writing in the Old Testament. The first Old Testament prophets whose prophecies were written during their lifetime were Amos and Hosea from the time of around 750 before Christ. George Smith mentions in his journal the discovery of the Book of Law in 621. Most of the text was written in Hebrew and one in Aramaic, which was an international language in the Middle East and has been used by Jews since the early 7th century before Christ. Christ himself spoke and preached in Aramaic. According to Albright, Aramaic originated from the West Semitic dialect spoken in northern Mesopotamia in the early 2nd millennium. However, it was named after Aram, the region in northern Mesopotamia after which Syria was also called Aram. The Armenian language has been in use as one of the languages in Assyria and then in Median and Persian empires and in Seleucid Empire, in Greek Seleucides. From the 4th century BC, some parts of the Old Testament date back to the 2nd century BC and were written in Greek, which dates from the 4th century BC, which was then an international language. The Old Testament was written entirely in Greek and translated from it to other languages. The Old Testament was translated to Greek in Alexandria in 277 BC during the reign of Emperor Ptolemy II Lagic, in Greek Lagides. This translation is known in the West as the 70 because it is usually assumed that the 70 translators worked on it, independently of each other. But it is true that there were 72 translators. That is why instead of the 70, we use the name Translation 72. This translation is also best and most complete translation of the Old Testament. Both testaments were translated into Latin by an Illyrian Serb, Sophronius Hieronym, the famous Saint Hieronym, 3082 to 3085 AD. This translation is known as Vulgata and it serves from then until today as the official Bible of the Vatican Church. The word Vulgata in Latin means a widespread, general thing. In translation, the Old Testament, Hieronym relied heavily on Translation 72. In the scientific world, it is believed that Jews inherited some of the laws of the Old Testament from the inhabitants, the Canaanites, they found there during the occupation of Palestine, and among them the 10 Commandments of God. They took part of the Old Testament called Izorod and the story of the flood from Assyria. Knowledge and spatial distribution of people, tribes, by country in Europe and in Asia Minor could have originated only from Assyria, since Jews had no contact with larger number of them. Although Izorod cannot be taken as history in true sense of the word, he is a collection of stories that, along with other knowledge, enable us to create one historical whole. The approach to the ethnography of Izorod was done by a large number of testamentary scholars, mostly in simplified and erroneous way, as it is still by most contemporary writers. The literal interpretation is practice, such as that each of the mentioned people had an ancestor of the same name from when the whole nation descended, that the 3 mentioned sons of Noah, Sem, Ham, and Japhet are representatives of 3 races of nations, that the time of life of each of the ancestors given in a Jewish time is the same time the beginning of existence of people in question, and that Izorod was written in the time of Moses. Adhering to such predetermined approaches, it was not really possible to understand everything in what is written in Izorod. That is why, except for a few more conscious scientists, all of them broke their teeth in interpretation of Izorod. None of the mentioned understandings and approaches is sustainable, nor it is true. For the first, the 3 sons of Noah, Ham, Sem, and Japhet, do not signify the division of mankind into 3 races, because there are more than 3 human races, and among the descendants of these 3 representatives, the races are mixed. Among the descendants of Ham, there are 3 races. Among the descendants of Japhet, again 3, and among the descendants of Shem are at least 2. And what about those races that are not represented among the descendants of any of them, and which were known at that time of the writing of Izorod? The whole yellow race was left out in Izorod, and it was very numerous and famous at that time.